Never buy pillowcases again. Making them is easy, and even if you are a beginner, you will get higher quality results than the $10 best-selling product with a 4.6-star rating at 52K reviews on Amazon. This is a 1-star pillowcase. I have no idea what people are thinking. Amazon pillowcases are thin. The stitching is crooked, with raw edges serged but also not neatly finished. Mine's already coming undone on one end and they haven't even been washed yet. In my house, these will not last. For double the price using Quilter's cotton, you will get a superior pillowcase with an English envelope flap and zero raw edges as we will be using French seam allowances. Today's video is a king size English style pillowcase, which has that envelope flap to cover your pillow inside. And all you'll need is 2.5 yards, which will yield you 2 king size pillowcases. Also, did I tell you that it's zero waste? Because it is. From your yardage, you will cut out 14.5-inch strip by Witho fabric. Then a 74.5-inch by Witho fabric strip. If your cutting mat is small like mine, what I'd like to do is line it up and measure as far as I want, and in this case I am stopping at the 30-inch mark. I will then use a fabric marking tool and put a tally mark at the 30 inches on the raw edge. Then I will slide it to 0 and measure another 30 inches, mark it, and now 30 plus 30 is 60, so I'll need 14.5 inches left and make a cut. That will then result in 74.5-inch by Witho fabric. Pretty simple. Next, you will need to cut the 74.5-inch into 20 inches by 74.5-inch rectangle. So what I'll do is take the piece that I just cut and fold it in half, keeping the raw seams together and the folded seams together. I'll then keep folding it in half until it comfortably fits on my cutting mat. Then I will first trim off the raw edges, then measure over 20 inches and make a cut. You will then yield 2 rectangles. If you would like a more relaxed, loose pillowcase, cut 21 inches instead. Then with that first piece we cut out, cut a 21-inch by 14.5-inch rectangles. If you pick the relaxer, looser pillowcase, cut out a 21-inch by 14.5-inch rectangle. You will also yield 2 pieces as well. Now don't worry, all of these measurements will be listed down below in the video's description. Next, take the smaller rectangle and fold it in half and press it. We will be doing a lot of ironing and I highly recommend using seam throughout this project. Now that that piece is finished, set it aside, and on the shorter end of our long rectangle, on the wrong side of the fabric, mark a 1-inch line away from the raw edges. Then mark another at the 1.5-inch line away from the raw edges as well. You'll fold the raw edge to the first line and press it with your iron. Then you'll fold them again to the second line and press it with your iron to seal in those edges. You'll then sew 1/8 of a seam allowance on both sides. Make sure you use a thread color that matches or an accent color that you don't mind seeing. Technically, this side will be the envelope that gets stuffed inside, but you will kinda sorta not really see it, but still use a thread color that you wouldn't mind seeing. Next, take that 14.5-inch rectangle that we folded in half and unfold it and place the right side up. Take your super long rectangle and match the raw edges together on top of each other with the right side facing up, not the envelope side that we just sealed. Then we will carefully roll the long rectangle like a cinnamon roll all the way until it bumps over the iron seam. You'll then fold over the other side of that smaller rectangle over the cinnamon roll and match the raw edges together. Use pins or clips to hold everything in place, and you'll then sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Afterwards, pull the cinnamon roll out and iron your flap down. Your seams will be pointed to the folded line, and do your best to iron so that the seams inside do not bunch up or get folded up. Roll it like a rolling pin until it is flat and then go ahead and iron it. This next step is optional, but in my opinion, it will give your pillowcase a fancier look. It's simple, but it's that extra detail. And on the seam, sew 1/8 of an inch away from the side that we just ironed down. It will hold those inner seam allowances down when you go to wash your pillow. You can also use a decorative stitch if you want, and you can even sew 1/8 of an inch on both sides of that seam line or even the folded edge. This of course will be visible, so use a color you wouldn't mind seeing. Once again, this is all optional. Next, on the opposite side, you will fold over 7 inches and press. This is easier to do at your ironing board, and what we are doing is creating the envelope flap. Once it's ironed down, fold over the other end, wrong sides together, keeping that envelope flap ironed down. Make sure your edges are perfect, then iron the other end of the pillowcase. And once again, I normally do this all at the ironing board. It just makes everything easier. Once everything is flat, go ahead and pin or clip your raw edges together and sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides. Always start on the pillow's opening side. That way, if you end up stretching it a little bit, your seams will still match up at the opening. Now, using a rotary cutter or fabric scissors, trim off any of those loose strings along the edges. Do not skip this step. This is very important. You'll then turn your pillowcase inside out and iron your seams down. This part can be tricky. Roll the seams out like you're using a rolling pin or play the world's smallest violin with your fingers, and do take your time. This part always takes the longest for me. And for our very last step, you will sew a fat 1/4 inch seam allowance. That means somewhere between a 1/4 inch and 3/8 of an inch. If you're not comfortable with that, then go ahead and sew a 3/8 of an inch just to make it simple. You are creating a French seam allowance and it needs to be larger than the 1/4 inch to seal in those raw edges. Once you're done, turn your pillowcase right side out and you are done. You can then wash the pillowcase and then stuff your pillow or iron the seams down again for that more professional look. Either way, you are done. Repeat these steps for the other pieces to yield your 2 pillowcases. Now, I do have a bonus idea for you that will use up your scraps. In my last video, we roughly had 1 to 2 inches scraps remaining from the fat quarters. And since they are longer than 14.5 inches, I'm going to sew the strip sets together until I hit 20 or 21 inches long. This can be a decorative flap on the end. Then you can use a solid like me or a print within the collection for the long rectangle piece. Here you will see me square everything up to 14.5 inches by 20-inch rectangle. And although I didn't iron my seams open, I highly recommend that you do. After I finished, I wish I had because it would make everything flatter. This is something that I sadly did not think about until the end. But here is what my scrappy pillowcase looks like all completed. I promise if you are using quilting cotton fabrics or even Art Gallery's cotton poplin fabrics, you will yield a better quality pillowcase than what you can get at Amazon. I have yet to toss out a homemade pillowcase, and we wash everything at least once a week. Sometimes more if we have a dirty dog getting the zoomies after it rained outside. I say that because it won't stop raining here where I am right now, and my house is sadly getting muddy. But I do hope you have enjoyed today's tutorial. If you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can be notified for your next amazing quilt project.